Up next, teachers' unions spent heavily in the last election. What did they get for their money, and how are they responding to criticism that they're obstacles to education reform? We talk with A.J. Duffy of UTLA. That when News Conference returns. They played a major role in the last election. The teachers' unions in California, specifically the United Teachers of Los Angeles. A.J. Duffy is the president. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
Your assessment of the election?
Well, I think overall, in terms of the statewide offices, we did very well. We sent a message to the state that it's not up for sale. You can't buy offices in California.
A message about Meg Whitman spending $150 million.
Yeah, and I think Carly Fiorina spent quite a hefty amount of money, but you can't buy elections.
She was actually outspent by Barbara Boxer.
Was she? Okay.
Yes. But in terms of Jerry Brown, what do you expect from him? You backed his candidacy.
Yes, and we have no illusions. I think we understand that Jerry is in a tough situation. The fiscal crisis in California is very real. He has made it clear he's going to go after certain items that he's going to look at, pension being one of them, pension reform. What we hope is that he will change the complexion of the State Board of Education now that Tom Torlakson is there, and that was a big win for us. We expect to see more people on the state school board who want to work collaboratively with teacher unions to fix what's wrong in public education, rather than having a board that is seems to be in favor of giving schools away.
What advice do you give Jerry Brown?
Work collaboratively with us. Don't do top-down. Have the discussions. We know at the end of the day it's your decision and the legislature's decision, but talk to us before you start cutting and slashing.
The legislative analyst
everything.
This past week comes out and says that we're looking at another $26 billion budget deficit. What does that say to you? More cuts are on the way.
Well, what we would like to see is a good balance between some cuts and some increase in taxes. You cannot close that kind of a deficit on the backs of the citizens of California. We recognize that there does have to be cuts, but business and industry is going to have to realize that they have to kick in a little bit. They made $57 billion in profits last year, and they gave their corporate CEOs and top people $8.5 billion in salary and perks, and we laid off 100,000 people in the public sector. That's a formula for disaster. You can't do that.
Let's talk about the position of the unions, the teacher unions in America right now. Waiting for Superman is a popular documentary that is out that focuses a laser beam on what is perceived to be, and even the Obama administration has made mention of this, a recalcitrance on the part of the teachers union that you're an obstacle to reform. Respond first of all to that documentary. I assume you've seen it.
Yeah, I would also say that there's another documentary out, Race to Nowhere, and people should look for that, and it gives a different view. We think that clearly...
Race to Nowhere being a slam on Race to the Top.
No, it shows a good view of what happens in schools with students and teachers, more of a real-life view of a day-to-day, week-to-week, month-to-month, the grind that students and teachers go through. We think that Davis Guggenheim's Waiting for Superman was highly sensationalized, a very slanted view. As a matter of fact, when he said that he had to drive past his children's home school every day. I looked at every school in the neighborhood that he lives in, and they're all good schools. And the pictures that he showed of the schools that he had to drive by were not the schools in his neighborhood. So clearly, I'm going to put it out there and say, Davis Guggenheim, you lied, you lied, you lied to the American public.
Well, the argument to the point of his documentary and to the point of the administration. Let me read you a quote from President Obama when asked about the teachers' unions. I'm a strong supporter of the notion that a union can protect its members and help be a part of the solution as opposed to part of the problem. What is also true is that sometimes that means they are resistant to change when things are not working. Are you resistant to change?
Absolutely not. And I'm only going to speak for UTLA and LAUSD. It was UTLA that brought the pilot programs in here from Boston. They're pilot schools. They're very innovative. The district likes to call them thin contracts. We call them different contracts. It was UTLA that created expanded school-based management, or what we call ESBMM. The first school was in Woodland Hills Academy, 70% minority, over 100 points gained on their academic performance index in 7 years. We brought in the Peer Assistance and Review Program. We went to the Times, created an op-ed piece 8 to 10 months ago, and asked for a change in the evaluations. We are in negotiations now, and we are talking very seriously about a peer assistance and review program that also has a counseling out component for people who simply should not be in the profession.
Counseling out, what does that mean?
Well, that means after being given guidance and assistance, if somebody is in a PAR program, a peer assistance and review program, and a group of administrators and teachers, master teachers, realize that this person really does not belong in the classroom.
You try to talk them out of it.
No, we need a mechanism that says this is not your profession, and you just simply can't be in front of a classroom.
We'll talk
anymore.
more about that. We're talking to A.J. Duffy of the United Teachers of Los Angeles. We'll have more questions when news conference returns. We're talking with A.J. Duffy, president of the United Teachers of Los Angeles. 45,000 members, correct?
45,000 teachers and health and human service
and
professionals.
affiliated with the California Teachers Association.
Yes, and with the California Federation of Teachers. We are a merged local, AFT and NEA.
Let's talk about value added. Now, this was an effort by LAUSD to collect information on teachers, and they would, over the course of years, take a look at students who enter in a classroom based on where they were via standardized test before and where they ended up. And in some cases, they went from 60th percentile after a year in this person's class, they went to 80th percentile. Or they went down to the 40th percentile. LAUSD didn't do anything with that till the LA Times came along, obtained the information, and then printed the evaluations after crunching the numbers. You were vehemently opposed to that. Why?
Well, actually, value added is a methodology of looking at standardized test scores over many years. And the main component is some sort of statistical way of leveling the playing field so you could actually get an idea of whether a student is learning or not. The problem with that is we've narrowed our curriculum. Our standardized tests only test 15% of what a teacher teaches in a given year. There are two misunderstandings and misperceptions by the public, purposely on the part of the Times. It's built upon the premise that every child in every socioeconomic group that is the same, basically, same parentage, same neighborhood, they're the same child, which is to say every white kid is the same on the same block in the same neighborhood, or every African-American kid is the same, and that just doesn't hold true. The other part of it is it assumes that every child is put into a classroom randomly, and that doesn't happen. They're not put into classrooms randomly. There are many classrooms where we have 4 or 5 splits, 4th grade, 5th grade splits. There are students that are special ed, that are in some of our regular classes that are not even on our rolls, but they come in for mainstreaming, and we are responsible for them. Look, when the Department of Education says there's a 20% variance in standardized test scores from year to year, that is monumental. There is no way you can judge the quality of a teacher based upon that. We put forward an idea, and we're sitting down with the district now, both in negotiations, and a side group that is going to study best practices around the country with administrators, with the district, with UTLA, and create an evaluation system that's good for the kids, fair and accurate for teachers, and one that supports the teaching and learning in the classroom. No evaluation system is worth anything unless it supports teaching and learning in the classroom.
Now, but at this point, though, there was no effort, if I understand correctly, to look at the figures that were brought up by LAUSD and find the best practices of those teachers who year in, year out brought in students into their classroom and left them at a higher percentile vis-a-vis the rest of the student population that was tested. And so one wonders whether or not it gets back to the notion that a teacher is a teacher is a teacher. That you're not interested in rewarding a teacher, that certainly you're against merit pay, but that you haven't gone out of your way to look at the best practices of those teachers who are successful in the classroom.
Well, actually we have, but we approach it from a different perspective. We know who the good teachers are at schools. And
do the parents know?
The parents know because
how do they know?
A lot of schools they go visit the classrooms. I mean, the parents are up in arms at Wilbur Avenue Elementary when teachers were labeled as less effective. Look, let me speak as a parent and a grandparent. Do I want my children and grandchildren to be good test takers, or do I want them to have a well-rounded, student-centered, whole child approach? That's what I want, well-rounded, whole child approach. We don't give art to the kids anymore, and art is incredibly important. We don't teach science hardly in elementary, or the rudiments of the democracy we live in through teaching elementary kids social studies. We've got to get back to those kinds of basics and get away from this test mania.
Test mania, but is there a way, we only have 20 seconds left, a way to figure out whether or not you are achieving your goal without at least finding out whether he can, he can add or subtract?
With multiple measures, formative tests. That's what we need more of, formative tests. Teacher gives that test at that moment, scores it, and the next day or 2 days later, they see where a particular student is, they see where a whole classroom is, and they can craft or recraft their approach to a particular lesson based upon that.
A.J. Duffy, the United Teachers of Los Angeles, your term expires in June.
Term expires in June.
We'll be talking to you before then. Thank you very much for coming.
Thank you very much.
We'll have some final comments after this.